Hello and welcome to the Overly Animated Podcast, where we take animation seriously. I'm Dylan Hysen, and today I'm joined by Delaney Stovall.
Hey, y'all.
Michelle Anderer.
Hello.
And Sarah Potter.
Hello.
This is our second annual Queer Representation in Animation Year in Review podcast. We are going to be getting into the ups and downs in queer representation in all of animation, Western anime, in the year 2019, going through trends, progress that has been made or not made, and going through specific shows highlighting specific moments of representation from throughout the year. Like I said, we did one of these last year, so you could listen to that for kind of the genesis of this podcast. We'll be doing a similar thing this year, and I think there's a lot to get into from this year. A lot of interesting discussion points on queer rep that happened this year. Also, just a lot of interesting moments from a lot of these shows. Big general spoiler warning here. We're getting into a lot of shows, and we have to get into spoilers for a lot of these shows. I would say there's nothing that's like a super huge spoiler. Maybe some of the anime honestly sounds like the most spoilers at the end. But if you haven't seen the shows, when I bring up a show, you might want to skip ahead. But also, I think it's worth it to get into spoilers absolutely for this topic. We're overlyanimated.com, by the way. Find us there. Search for us on iTunes and everything, and check out other podcasts we're doing. We generally discuss topics like this throughout all of our podcasts. This is one in particular where we dive into queer issues specifically. Another warning is that we're going to talk about a lot of shows here, but we don't watch every show, so I might be missing stuff from throughout the year. We put our heads together and tried to come up with most of the things that jumped out. But it's possible we're missing something. I would say listen to last year's podcast for a more in-depth intro into this topic, but some important things to get out of the way, starting with the same introductory quote from Steven Universe creator Rebecca Sugar, because I think this is just really good and really base level for understanding why are you guys doing a whole podcast on this? Well, here you go. Rebecca Sugar says, by including LGBTQIA content and characters in G-rated entertainment for kids, you tell kids when they're young that they belong in this world. You can't not tell them that. There can't only be a certain group of kids who are told someone will love you by all the entertainment that they see. It's just so unfair. So she's saying kids, very important that they see queer characters on TV, that they see themselves echoed on screens. Also true of adult shows and people our age watching shows. It's very important to us as well, personally, I think. This is a very important topic for all of us, and just a very important topic in general. Another, I think, kind of basic thing to know about this is that if you watch a lot of maybe animated shows meant for kids on TV, you might not be aware, but most shows have censorship on them. Like almost every single show, the animators, storyboarders, writers attempt to get in queer representation, because a lot of them are like queer or young and progressive, and a lot of it is shot down up the chain. So we're going to be talking about maybe failings of shows. We don't necessarily mean the people writing it or anyone creating it. It could be above their heads, or the good things, so it's like, why isn't there more? Like every show is censored. I think this is an important thing to know. Okay. So, and that Rebecca Sugar quote is from an EW article. You can search Steven Universe Voltron, kids cartoons, LGBTQ characters, something like that to get that article. Okay, so looking over this year's representation from this year, I think that last year was more obvious, maybe to me, what we're going to talk about to start with. Last year was like a big groundbreaking year for Western animation, with the first 3 ever same-sex kisses involving a main character on kids' TV. This year continued that trend, yay, and but also I feel like I wouldn't say there's one moment as flashy, not necessarily as good or as important. I think those are subjective, but I don't know what the flashy headline is for Rep this year. Maybe you guys can weigh in on that soon, but there's maybe more of a subdued year on the surface, but I think once you dig into it, you start to see trends, like one trend that absolutely stuck out to me and helped by literally this past week Steven Universe contributing to it, but this is like a much better year for genderqueer representation, especially non-binary characters being presented in shows. There's several non-binary characters being presented in shows.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, I think like that's I think by far the most obvious trend, and not necessarily something we expected, because I don't know if we talked about that almost at all last year. So that's very interesting. We'll definitely get into that. And a headline on the anime side, I think we talked about it last year, but I think anime is improving a lot. There is rep to talk about this year, and in past years there's almost no explicit rep to talk about. I will say, though, that it's still just a few shows, and there's still a lot of problematic shows, so it's a lot of mixed feelings, I think, with rep and anime, but there's some real highlights that some of these guys are going to talk about. So I guess other points I have, I think you have to look a little past Steven Universe and She-Ra to see kind of the big rep highlights of the year. Steven Universe is the big gay show, and She-Ra is like the new gay show,
the big
right?
gay
Like,
show.
The big gay show and the new gay show.
but like they neither had super explicit, at least sexual orientation wise, like identity, like no huge moments, I would say.
This is the year of gay parents.
Yeah, it's your gay parents. Both
that is
male
true.
and female.
There are very important parents in She-Ra and other shows. So we'll get into that, but I think that is something important to know. Maybe it feels quieter because I think we maybe expect She-Ra to break through in a bigger way in its last season, and Steven Universe, just for whatever reason, we'll talk about that, had its stuff last year, not this year. And then yeah, like I said, it's harder to see these big trends, but I want us to try and find what's meaningful throughout this podcast. So I think like we can talk about this as we can maybe develop our feelings on this as we go on. So all that being said, let's go to each of you guys. Like, looking back on the year, like what are some moments that stand out the most to you from shows you watch? We all watch different shows. Like, what did you react to most? What feels most meaningful to you? And like I mentioned some headlines that stand out to me. In the beginning, you don't have to have this right away, because we could, like I said, we can develop it as we go on. But do you have any also that immediately come to your mind, Delaney?
So I've been getting people warmed up with my big gay rat speech.
Yeah!
So
Is that now?
that is now the big gay rat speech. Is happening
This
now.
is Arthur.
So Arthur, yes. So pretty much everyone has like a concept of what Arthur is. I didn't watch a lot of Arthur growing up. Now my fiance did, and I know a lot of people watched it growing up. I was a privileged child who had cable, and my fiance was not one of those kids. And the reason I tell you that is so I'm from Kentucky. I live in Kentucky, and Kentucky is mostly rural. And so when you were talking about, there aren't really a lot of standouts, and I agree with that. There aren't a lot of standout moments. There aren't a lot of, big flashy gay nonsense happening, but I really do think that Mr. Ratburn and the Special Someone, the season premiere for, I think it's season 22 of Arthur, might be, obviously, for me, Legend of Korra is very important, and that was definitely a milestone in representation for Western animation. But I believe Mr. Ratburn and the Special Someone might be the moment that we might be able to pinpoint things changing. And the reason why, and yes, PBS, you don't watch things on PBS, you're like, oh, they're lying to me. Because that's not what PBS is for. PBS exists to teach people things. And PBS, if you don't have cable, you can watch PBS. And so this is extremely meaningful to me as someone who lives in a rural community. And because you have to have Netflix to watch She-Ra. A lot of the shows we cover, you have to watch Netflix. On the last season of The Legend of Korra, you had to watch it online. Nick murdered the show by moving it to Nick Online. There are kids who have no idea that Korra and Selma got together, even if they religiously watch The Legend of Korra every episode until the end of season 3. Because the show got moved to online. PBS comes on every day, same time, and kids watch Arthur. And parents love Arthur. This is the important part, kids at home. Parents love Arthur. And you learn good stuff from Arthur. Arthur is a good, wholesome child show. Parents don't like SpongeBob SquarePants. They don't like, a lot of these dumb Cartoon Network shows. I say dumb. I obviously don't think it's dumb. We're going to talk about Cartoon Network shows. But parents love PBS. And PBS had a show. They had Arthur, the show about the aardvark where they do kid stuff and learn crap. They had Mr. Ratburn, an important character, their teacher, marry a man. It was the whole episode was about it. The whole episode was like, oh my god, he's gay. Awesome. They were so worried that he was going to get married to this horrible person who was actually his sister. And they're like, oh my god, we're so happy for you, Mr. Ratburn. So even though everyone's like, LOL, gay rat wedding, this is extremely important. This is the only thing that can come after this that would be a bigger deal is going to be when we have our gay Disney princess.
Yeah. Once
we have a gay Disney princess, it's over, guys. We won on animation, not other things. When we have a gay Disney princess, we're like, yes, we're so close.
Elsa.
Hopefully. Elsa. When Elsa's gay, it'll be great. Okay? But no, this really is extremely meaningful to me, and everyone watches PBS. Everyone I didn't watch Arthur religiously. Did I even watch this episode? No.
We didn't watch the episode. Yeah.
What?
That was a blindside. To echo what you're saying, I think this is the thing that got the most headlines this year.
It did, exactly. And that's another important thing, is that everyone knew this happened. I have seen the clips. I didn't watch the whole episode because I don't watch PBS. I know. I'm terrible.
Yeah, so basically meaningful to you, but visible, invisible to a lot of people that might not see a lot of these things.
Right, and the thing is, in the reality in Kentucky and a lot of states and a lot of rural areas, this is the only source of cartoons kids get. They watch PBS and they get to watch all the animated shows on PBS.
Yeah, and I think that's important for us to keep in mind, because even though maybe compared to some other things, this is a wedding involving a side character,
right.
It might not seem as important. I agree, this is going to be one of the most impactful things, because visibility is also really important, and Arthur's kind of this iconic show, and this definitely had the most headlines here.
Well, it's for example, I don't watch anime. I don't.
How dare.
And a lot of people don't watch anime. A lot of people who we're trying to fight with. Granted, a lot of people do watch anime. I'm not saying they don't. But if some obscure anime gets gay rep, I'm like, that's awesome. Maybe I'll go watch it. But I don't really care.
Yeah. So what's important to you is things that a lot of people are seeing.
Yes, because I think that's ultimately the point of queer representation. Now, granted, that's the thing. That's what we're talking about. Korra. So if we make our starting point, the Legend of Korra. Korra's gay. And then we begin to see all these other shows that are gay. And, it's a trickle down that works. And, it was a big deal. It wasn't done great, but DreamWorks had the end of Voltron was gay. DreamWorks. After all that nonsense. It's and now we have She-Ra, which is the gayest show without being gay. It's incredible.
Yeah, so I definitely so you're saying this is I think this is one type of importance of rep we can talk about, which is visibility to people that wouldn't normally see it, which is a lot what that Rebecca Sugar quote's about, is kids seeing it.
Yeah, and then the kids seeing it. And obviously I want to watch things that I want to watch be gay. Duh.
Right, that's the other thing is there's people like us that might seek out obscure shows to watch. And that's important too.
Yeah, and I have the ability. I can afford Netflix and the 95 other subscriptions we have to watch things. Kids can't. They have to watch whatever their parents watch. And yes, a lot of people have Netflix. But in my community, which is rural Kentucky, which do I know a lot of gay people? I do. And I've gone out places. I've been to really small fairs, and I've had kids come up to me and be like, "Oh my God, are you gay?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Me too. I've never met another gay." This legitimately happened to my fiance. It was Pride, and she was wearing Pride clothing, and this kid who had never met another gay person got to interact with someone who was out. And that's why this stuff is so important to me. Yeah, big rep, very important. I'm really happy that y'all like to watch anime and you're going to have gay anime. That's awesome. I'm so happy for you. But then you know, when kids they don't see it, they don't get to experience it, but, you know, they're stuck. And stuff like PBS is really important to where I come from.
Yeah, I really like that perspective from you. Very personal about how this affects like people around you's lives you've seen, and I love highlighting Arthur early on, because you're right. Like, even though it's a show we're not like talking about on this podcast regularly, Arthur in his 22nd season, like this is probably like, I do think this is maybe the biggest moment of the year in terms of global recognition. So awesome stuff, and we can come back to Arthur to get, I guess, other perspective and stuff.
I told you the gay rat speech was coming.
Okay, there you go. Thank you. I forgot it was coming. I was pleasantly surprised.
I kept updating people that the gay rat speech is coming.
Okay, Michelle. To refresh on the question, what's some rep most meaningful to you, or that stood out to you the most from this year, or any other headlines that you're thinking of right now?
Oh, man. Well, I'm still reeling off of the gay rat speech, too. Because, like your fiance, Delaney, I also grew up with not cable and would just watch PBS religiously. And Arthur was one of the... Like, PBS had a lot of quality shows in the early 2000s, but Arthur was just consistently very good and very funny. And that's the thing. Like, it's going strong for that long. They must be doing something right to keep it going and have, like, the ratings they need to keep greenlighting seasons. So, like, it is kind of this really safe seeming, well, not seeming, like, it's a very safe, like, quote unquote normal show that any parent would trust their kid with. So for them, like Delaney's saying, like, for them to be like, all right, Mr. Rapper, it's your time, you're gonna get married finally. This wonderful man, who is he also a rat? I forget. He's a creature. And they're in love. It's great. Yeah, it's Arthur. And it's like, if it can be okay on Arthur, it can literally be okay anywhere. That's kind of how it feels seeing it on PBS. Because I also agree that, like, while there are more niche shows, yeah, he's an aardvark. While there are more niche shows that can kind of delve into a lot of, like, maybe interpersonal character drama and, like, what's it like being very specifically, like, queer for them, like, there is something really important about just normalizing it for the sake of normalizing it. And I agree with everything Delaney said. It's very important not to lose sight of that, because that's a huge part of the mission, hopefully, of just, like, queer things on television, but especially for children. A lot of anime isn't for children, so it's really good that they can start with Arthur.
And when we do this, like, we said earlier that this is kind of the year of gay parents. Well, we've normalized people having gay parents, and now we have a gay marriage in Arthur, and then, you know what? That's how this works, is you normalize representation. You don't have to explain it all the time, because people begin to become accustomed to it. And then we're not going to have like a trans storyline every time we introduce a trans character. You just be like, oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing too. Like, I feel like, honestly, like, Dylan, you're asking, like, what are my biggest takeaways? It's the thing that's so interesting about this year is it's just, this feels like the first year in a while that's just, like, such a ripple effect year in terms of, like, all these shows have a permeated part of them that's queer in some way. And that, I think, on its own is just, like, one of the biggest steps we're seeing in terms of that normalization. Because, like, I feel very strongly about Professor Venomous and Lord Boxman getting married. But also, like, it's wonderful that, like, they're not the only two people explicitly gay who also get married in that show. And, like, that's
I was reading the outline,
because, like,
and I was
because,
like, in the show.
They're like you got Enid and Red Action, you got Joff and Nick getting married, and then you have Professor Venomous and Boxman. And the good thing about that is, like, it helps normalize it even more, because, like, sometimes I get scared when, like, you know, in the past, when you see characters that are kind of coded as evil, and they're allowed to be a little more, like, queer-coded, because it's like there's an implicit interpretation of, like, oh, but they're bad, though. You don't want to be like them. But if you make everyone gay, it's like, it doesn't matter. Like, who you can be gay and anything. And that's the best. That is the best thing you can do. Yeah, like you can be gay dads. Your best friend can have her girlfriend from the future. You can be evil businessmen husbands together. Like you can be anything and be gay. And that's good too, because like that's a huge difference between being like, oh, I have my one friend who's gay and that's it. They're my token gay, versus like like your teacher, your Mr. Rapper teacher can be gay, your parents are gay, your best friend's gay, everyone's gay. You know? Like that is the next logical step in all this. And I feel like just based on the sheer amount of things we have now with characters, even if they're not main characters, it's like it's all good and this is equally important. So I'm really glad we're here. I just like wanted to keep going forever until everything's gay.
Everything's gay.
Yeah. That's really our agenda, right? Yeah.
That's the true gay agenda.
Yeah, I love that, Michelle. That's definitely something I wanted to talk about. Like, I want to frame it like this. Last year, Rebecca Sugar, I think, talked a lot in the once they had the RWBY Sapphire Kiss about like, you know, like you break like she had to like break the ceiling on this for her show, and then it's like because they had to get past this barrier of like, oh, we don't want other countries, we don't like on advertisers or pushback or something, and like once it happened, it's like, oh, okay, we can just do whatever.
Everything's gay now,
right? So and you know, and I don't like it wasn't super reflected this year in Steven Universe, but in general, it's like if this is the year after Steven and Adventure Time, maybe even Voltron and some other shows, like actually broke this barrier that had been holding children's animation in the U.S. back, and now this is it's a small ripple, I think, but we're starting to see the effects in a lot of shows. Like
it's much larger, yeah. It's a much larger reach this time.
And like even though like personally I want to see bigger moments, but there's just so much stuff. Like I do think this is us starting to see the effects of it. And yeah, like I think it will continue into the going forward now. Like I can't see how it'll like revert back. Like I think now that we're past it, it's only just gonna keep going, and it'll be interesting to see how it keeps going. But like we're gonna keep moving forward in some ways, and I think that's interesting for us to get into here. Sarah, how about you? Like moments that kind of personally stand out to you from the year?
I think I need to preface this with I have been an ally like pretty much all my life, just based on the fact that I was in a very accepting household. Like I grew up in like an area where I was not like in the middle of nowhere. Like I just had a chance to be. I've been like I knew that part of myself for a long time, and I've only been queer essentially, or known I'm queer for like a year. So like my opinions are a little colored by that. I haven't had like this huge history of watching shows from that angle. Essentially, like I've always loved when there's stuff in there, but it's just I love how gay this year is. There's a lot of gay stuff, but it's still frustrating looking at this year and saying I can't see myself in any of these shows, and I can't see my husband in any of these shows, and that sucks. And I think that I am really happy that there's all this gay stuff. It's just like there's this big line between LGBT and T, and like it's because they're really different things, and they're grouped together because they're generally together, but they're just so different and such different narratives about identity, and that it makes it hard for me to be very excited about this year. But that's just because I think that I'm looking at a lot of stuff with fresh eyes in a lot of ways, so it's difficult for me to give a completely unbiased, unlike equivocal, like this year was great type thing, just because I only have a year essentially to look back on.
Yeah, and I think
should I give like specific shows? Am I supposed to do that now? I'm sorry.
No, I mean, I think you were like there wasn't anything. So how do you like give specific?
That's the problem, Dylan. Like the thing is, like I loved all the gay stuff everyone mentioned. I knew about it. I watched it, but like there were non-binary things, and it's crazy for me to say this. The best representation this entire year for me, like from someone like me, was the stuff from Genlock. That is shocking to me. Mm-hmm. Absolutely shocking. Because the fact of the matter is, most of the gender nonconforming stuff that happened in the shows was stuff that involved people that weren't transitioning in any active way. And that is fine. Like, those people are valid, those people exist, and those people are real, and they deserve, like, representation. But the fact of the matter is, the thing that really gets a lot of people up in arms is the idea that kids shouldn't take certain types of medicine, shouldn't get the medical necessary stuff they need to feel good about themselves, to feel happy. And that stuff's just very not seen in TV, not seen in animation, except for Genlock for some reason. And that meant a lot to me to have this active thing said that, like, I've actually transitioned multiple times. Like, we have the technology in this year for me to just change my body when I feel like it. And that's awesome. Like, that's awesome for me to see. But there's still no, like, we're not at the point where we can just have a trans character and not say anything, because I think, like, if I was 10 and I had someone on TV, like, actually explain what trans is, like, I would have realized who I am a long time ago and actually gone through and shown that someone could change their body the way they want it. Because unfortunately, that is a huge part of why I'm transitioning. It's not just because I want people to call me a girl. I want to look in the mirror and see someone that looks like me. And there isn't a lot of representation for that. And so that's why I'm, like, going to be a little bit, it's going to be difficult for me to talk around all your excited talkings, because, like, at the same time, I'm very frustrated. And it's hard for me to pair that with all the things happening this year.
Yeah, and absolutely valid. Like you said, like, where are the trans characters in any of these shows, right? Like, and it's interesting, like, that the headline, I feel like, is, oh, a lot of shows had non-binary characters, but there's also not really trans characters here. Yeah, like, I mean, it's probably, like, complicated to get into that.
Like, because here's the thing, non-binary characters, again, are very valid, and they're very real, and, like, or non-binary people, I mean, not characters. But the thing is, like, a lot of non-binary people, I know a lot of friends I have, don't consider themselves trans because either A, they're not going through transition, they're just changing their presentation, they're just talking to people and saying, I prefer they, them pronouns, and that's valid, that's real, and that's, like, something that people do. But there are other people who do transition, and they still don't consider themselves trans because it's just a very different thing. They're not aiming to be a certain thing. Like, there's a lot of complex stuff with gender non-conforming characters and people and characters, I mean, and specifically people that feel like they're trapped in their body, people feel like they're not the person they were assigned incorrectly at birth and they need to change their body. That type of stuff isn't here because we have Violet from Young Justice who says they're non-binary, but she doesn't do any active thing to transition or present differently at all. Like, that's frustrating. That's frustrating. No one acknowledges it. I don't want to, like, again, I want to be clear, like, this is a valid thing to be. It just takes away from the fact that, like, this can be more. This is usually more. And it's frustrating that it's just, I don't think I'm fully a girl, and then that's the end of discussion. Like, that's never the end of discussion or the end of her journey. And there's a lot of examples like that this year, where you have a character whose model fully matches one of the two gender models they have in their system, and they just say, this person is not, they're they, them, and that's it. And that's not really representation because it's just so obviously, like, they just, there's not a real step there to explain what's going on with that person, and it's very frustrating.
Yeah,
I think I'm just looping around. Sorry.
No, I think probably a big reason we're seeing a lot of non-binary rep, but not necessarily trans rep, is that it's easier to get past the censors just calling a character they. Like, as great as Double Trouble is in She-Ra, we don't get into their identity at all. Like, it's just here's a character, we call them they. To DreamWorks' credit, they highlighted it a lot in the press, which I do think is kind of important. But this is like a bit, and this is another thing I thought of a lot. There's really no depth to most of these presentations with non-binary characters. Honestly, also the gay characters too. Like, we're not getting to we have like very base level presentations of some people, but we don't get into like what this means for them and their identity. Yeah, you're right. Maybe Genlock is one of the most notable exceptions. Because
we go into it, we talk about it. It's an important part of who she is or who they are. Like, it's hard to talk about their identity because during the show their pronouns change, they adapt as the show goes on, and it's difficult for me to be like, Genlock is the best of the year, because the thing is, like, this is just a very basic beginning of discussion type thing, like, and I'm not trying to take away from it because Val is a great character, but it's just like they are not the focus of the show, and their story is. I'm sorry. I'm just rambling now, Dylan. I'm sorry.
No. I mean, I think
we'll get to it as we get to other stuff in the year. Like,
yeah, we can continue to talk about it. But yeah, I absolutely agree with everything you're saying, and I think that's really important to talk about. And yeah, I mean, personally, like, there's a lot of exciting stuff here, but from the perspective of like we don't get in depth with anything, like any sort of rep, like that's what's disappointing to me. Like, also, there's no like huge moments.
I will say that was also last year. Like, none of our representation. Because unless we have the closest we get is Steven Universe, unless the show is about being gay or being queer, we don't get that sort of rep.
Yeah, and honestly, Steven doesn't get into it that much either.
Exactly. Like we're lucky. The closest thing we get is fusion, and that's only occasionally.
Yeah.
And we're lucky if we get lip service, and that's what all this rep is. So I think this is a greater problem with, queer media.
Yeah, and I do think this is an element of censorship. Like, it's one thing to get a base level presentation through; it's another thing to get like an entire arc and stuff through. Right. And so I have yet to. We haven't really gotten a coming out story in animation. Like, that's not a thing that hasn't happened. And I agree with all of this. Like, it doesn't happen. So I mean, unfortunately we have to be happy with lip service for now. Yeah.
I do think it's interesting that Sarah's pointing out, like, there seems to be, even within like queer representation, a hierarchy of like what's what do we start with, and then how say straight executives understand all this. It's like it's through that funnel. So if they're more comfortable with the idea of like, okay, like two boys like each other, I guess that's fine, versus like a non-binary person, well, I don't really, okay, and then getting to trans, like it is unfair and frustrating, and I think Sarah's made that pretty clear that like there is this weird hierarchy that kind of exists in terms of funneling things that make more sense to you if you are already queer in some way than if you're not. But like it is all having to be funneled, I think, primarily for a straight cis audience, even though like I think a huge part of the goal for a lot of these teams making these shows is for actual queer non-cis kids to identify with people who look like them and act like them and have experiences that they have. And that's
unfortunately, you gotta get them both.
You gotta get them both. And that's the thing. I feel like there's more interest in appealing, like, what's gonna make sense to, like, our average straight cis demographic than, like, the actual... I mean, it's important that they understand it, too, but I think, like, the queer kids are also very in need of just the stuff in general, regardless of how well higher up people understand these things themselves. Like, it needs to be made.
Yeah, I think it reflects our society, what we're seeing to a large extent. We've been moving towards more general acceptance of male and female representation,
marriage,
right? But like trans people are under fire in a way that be honest, a lot of gay people are not right now, and I think that's coming through and not having that rep there.
I want to say this and say that like everybody like has struggles, everyone has that, but I just want to explain like the reason this needs to happen is because I went through puberty. That sucked. And that's a permanent thing that happened to me and Cade. And if I could have found out earlier that happened, but my body has been irrevocably changed. And if I could have found out, I would be a literally completely different person today. And I want that for people like me who are growing up in the future. And that it just sucks that there's these kids that are being told they can't be this, and they're literally going through these things that are hurting them or going to hurt them, and they don't even know about it.
Yeah. So you're saying it practically it is especially important for trans kids to see rep earlier in life, so that it'd be much easier for them to transition.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think in general there's this importance of like this getting through to kids, and it's whatever rep type is not getting through, but. And we'll get more in depth in this. I think, like, I mean, we're already pretty far in, but like as we go through the shows, like while stuff is like what is breaking through, what's not. I don't know. I guess quickly stuff that particularly stood out to me that we haven't talked about. Like I don't know, I'm pretty like analytical with most things, but sometimes things really touch me. And
Yeah.
I think Star Butterfly this year, who's a character I just really love and connect with a lot. Just seeing her presented as bisexual, even in a minor way, was like pretty incredible. Like it's really just like 1.5 episodes, but like what they got in, I think was really meaningful. And then another thing was I think Craig of the Creek, in a lot of ways, the show I really connect with, and it's not like super explicit, but the Honeysuckle Rangers, the presentation of them.
Oh, they're so good.
I'm getting caught up on that show. I'm excited.
Oh,
yeah. I've always said that's real. It's like really impactful for me, and just seeing kind of like young boys. Like I think that's like pretty unique thing among all these shows, like young boys having feelings. So I think that was really wonderful. And we'll get into this. Let's start going through and of course bring up anything we talked about at any time as we go through here. We talked about a lot already, but with Steven Universe, like last year we had the big Ruby and Sapphire arc and their wedding and their kiss. This year we have more small moments. I think most notably for me would be like this week we got Shep, Sadie's new partner in Little Graduation, who's presented as non-binary, at least using they them pronouns. And a lot of people are loving Shep already.
Well, the whole time I was like, Steven, be nice. Shep's cool.
Yeah. Even though they're really new to everything, they're very insightful.
I was like, just based off the character design, I was like, Shep's really cool. Don't be mean to Shep.
I think this was good representation for non-binary people. For everything I just said that wasn't good. Like this is good representation because we say they them and we're very clear about that, and we say partner for them. Like that's really good. I really like this.
Yeah, I think it was like surface level, but like as good as surface level in one episode as you can do. Like,
exactly.
I think this is pretty good. And then the other things would be I think like just following up on Garnet being a gay creature, like what, like a manifestation of gay. Like the song "Isn't It Love" in the movie, one of my favorite parts. I think
it's the best.
And then also I think she's recapping her arc in Happily Ever After. I think those would probably be the big Garnet is gay moments in the movie. And then the like background characters of the Heaven and Earth Beatles in Steven Universe.
Yes, I smoked.
They're so gay for no reason.
They're the tiniest gay I've ever had. It's great.
They're so gay for no reason. Well, yeah, they have nothing to do with anything. Right?
I know, I love them. Like there's absolutely no reason for us to keep saying the Heaven and Earth Beatles be gay, and I love it. Like it's great.
Yeah. I would like to see Steven Universe future be a lot gayer. I like it's like part joking, but I think like I'm like we broke through the ceiling. Like I think we should do. I mean, it's I'm not sure if there's censorship involved or if it's like plot considerations or something.
Like how are you not just letting Rebecca Sugar do whatever? Like like whatever.
She's
literally
come so far.
She can do literally whatever she wants.
And I think it might be coming. You know, I think we have. We're probably not halfway even done with Future yet, so we'll see next year and come back to Steven Universe. She-Ra and the Princess's Power. So this was a big.
Everywhere.
It's like we listened to last year's podcast for kind of a debate on like how good or bad She-Ra's rep is because like everyone's coded as gay but not explicitly presented as gay. This year continues that. But we get some minor or secondary characters who are explicitly presented as queer.
You got like 3 chunks of people. They're deaf gay, yeah.
On its own, that's great. It's still not It's still not main characters, I would say, but also I mean, we're trending towards like a main character kiss. I assume in the last season, we'd have to.
Scorpio kisses Catra. Scorpio kisses Catcher or somebody. I don't know.
Someone better, maybe. I want her to have a real champion.
My fiance is listening very intently now.
I mean, I think most people are thinking Catra and Adora at the end of the show. You know,
she is. I'm not.
I mean, maybe Glimmer and Adora. Who knows?
Glimmer. Labrador.
I think we're still trending to Cachador kiss, but I don't
No,
know.
it's gonna be Glimtra. We're all gonna be like, what?
Yeah, what if it's just a three person kiss? That
would
I'm okay
surprise
with
everyone.
that.
breaking
cool.
ground. Okay, so I think for me the biggest thing this year was Double Trouble. We talked about them. The non-binary character uses they them pronouns.
Also, do you follow the voice actor on Twitter? Because they're the greatest human on earth, just so you know.
Yeah, they make good tweets.
That's good.
I see every single one of them, like, yes.
Yeah, and it should be noted, voiced by a non-binary person, and so was Shep.
Which is good.
Which is important, yeah.
The rep that actually matters is that.
Yes.
Yes. Well, that is great. But also the problem with... I'm sorry to keep bringing up the problems with it, but like my problem with this one is that they are a shapeshifter, like a non-human thing, like they are capable of expressing their gender in a way we are not as humans, and that is again frustrating.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, this could be a whole nother discussion. I think there's maybe a fine line between what you said of like, and the same thing with Steven Universe. It's aliens, but also like the magic affirming like element of it too, like that we've talked about, Sarah. Like I think you could maybe see it slightly as that too, but generally, I agree with the point about Double Trouble.
It's like an entry level, which is annoying, but
here's the thing.
I have to hope it's gonna get better.
Yeah. I love like magically affirming like gender identity stuff. Like that is fantastic. Like let's do more of that. But this is more just like a way to get across, like the censors are like, oh, this person can be whatever because they're not human or whatever. They're not real or whatever. They're not someone you could see on the street. Like that's okay. And that's what's frustrating about it.
Yeah, I think, and we've talked about this a lot, I think there's still a big barrier to break through with human characters being presented as queer.
That's why Shep is so exciting.
Yeah, Shep is great.
The only point I want to bring up is, like, obviously I agree that it's problematic in representation. Granted, this is a whole other thing with Shiro. All the animal characters are evil.
Scorpion's not evil.
Correct. I agree with you.
Have we ever talked about all the animal characters being evil? That's like a random, interesting observation.
Well, I mean, I was thinking,
the butterfly people weren't bad.
I'm saying that I agree, but also, like, there are animal people in She-Ra.
Yeah, it's built
like,
into
one of the main
mythology.
characters is an animal person. So, like, that's the only thing that, like, I agree with you.
Yeah,
but it's also, like, we have animal people. Catra's a cat. Like, I don't know.
It still stands though. Like same with Steven Universe. Like I would say, like,
yeah,
it's built into mythology,
but
it's still a thing there.
100% think part of the reason, like, frankly, like Pearl was able to be just so unabashedly gay from the beginning is because Rebecca in those early days could always make the argument to executives like, look, she's an alien. She's literally a gem. Her body's a light projection. Like she's her own thing.
I don't know what they're doing anymore.
Yeah. So I feel like there definitely is like a more comfort, I think, for people who are already a little uncomfortable with all the queer stuff to be like, well, okay, at least they're not human. Like, I guess it's not gonna, change anyone's mind really. Like, it's annoying to have these entry level points at all, because it should just be easy and simple and straightforward the way it feels in my brain. But I hope, Shep gives me hope. The fact that it's just popping up in so many different more places gives me hope. But, like, I agree. It is, like, annoying that it keeps having to be like, well, they're not quite human, though. They're not quite normal. And that somehow makes it safer. It shouldn't have to be safe, but...
It's a level of othering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is.
Yeah. And, I think this is a continued discussion always with kind of these shows that we're talking about. Definitely. We'll see if it's relevant.
I do want to clarify. I agree that the criticism is warranted. But I see it more in other shows than necessarily this show, just because, like, it's not like Double Trouble is the only weird animal person we see in the show.
No, that's fair.
But I will agree that I think a bigger thing is also they specifically in Double Trouble's presentation make Double Trouble creepier than they necessarily need to be. Like the eyes and like because they do a lot of weird eye stuff.
The ears,
and I mean like in the actual animation, like how they act, like they do like the creepy blinks and like and like their tongue, like that stuff. I was like, there was no reason to do that other than to make me feel weird. Like, don't do that. Like, no reason to do that.
I guess, yeah. So defending Double Trouble, I think I would say Double Trouble is the most notable non-binary rep of the year. Like, this is a character that's not a one-off character. It's not only explored in this episode. Like,
which that was something I was afraid of when they announced Double Trouble. I was like, oh, they're going to be in one episode. I was like, they're
constant throughout the season, constantly using they/them pronouns. It's like the bad part is like I think it's not explored at all or talked about, and also I think Double Trouble's character is not really gotten into. But they are present throughout the season and significant, and I do think they are sympathetic to the audience and made to be making like audience saying points. I think that's like to a certain extent, Double Trouble is like an audience surrogate character at some point, and I think that's kind of powerful of them being non-binary too.
When they confront Catra, especially at the end.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. So I think there's like a lot of good done with Double Trouble, and also it's like the most kind of consistent queer character that's been presented in the show in terms of like number of episodes in a row or something. So, but also we have other notable characters that pop up maybe sometimes, like Bo's dads. In the season 2 episode, I think we had a whole episode where they went to visit Bo's dads.
They come for the coronation, don't they?
I think they're
there.
They're slightly there, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, but I think mainly they're just presented as a very healthy relationship and cute together and stuff. Yeah,
and they are very cute,
and they're very supportive of Bo.
Yeah,
they are. They're supporting him more that he doesn't want to be like a librarian like them.
And we've talked about this, Dylan. There is a weirdly like trans-esque storyline happening.
A little with Bo, yeah.
I don't think it's a little. I think it's like.
I was gonna say we're probably not going into that much, but yeah, it's like there's a coming out story with Bo that's clearly a metaphor, but also not said what the metaphor is about.
Like you're unsure like exactly what's happening.
Yeah, it's a little ambiguous.
Yeah, so in general, that episode has queer themes throughout it, but those themes are not really extrapolated upon in a specific way. But yeah, that's I think that's one of the most significant queer episodes of the year, between Bo's dads and the kind of coming out theme to it.
You were like, you're coming out, but we don't know why.
Coming out as a fighter, right? Like, or as Natasha and Spinnerella, who were characters that were presented as together in previous year, are shown more explicitly and doing more things in the most recent.
And they're flirting. It's cute.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And they're married apparently, but that didn't get said.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're
must be older, married.
Yeah, I think they're definitely older than the teens.
To be fair, they're still like characters. I don't know how old anybody is. So
23, yeah.
It's nice to have that. Like, and in season 1, it was like these are the only gay characters explicitly, and they don't do anything. So it's nice to see them doing more.
Yes, definitely.
There's other queer characters too now. Other than that, there's some minor things. I guess this is also explicit in my mind. Huntara, I think, is kind of explicitly presented as queer because she's flirting with ladies.
Flirting with people.
Yeah. I think that's very clear. Also, not really explicit, but like more close to that than the show has been is Adora's crush on Huntara.
That's intense.
Yeah. And Adora's also just Scorpia herself, and like the last year when we talked about I feel Delaney and Dylan, you both brought up a very fair point that like where is the smooching? Like where's the obvious of the main characters? Yeah. And like I've sat on this for a year trying to think about like what I want to say, and this is what I want to say. You ready?
I'm ready.
Yeah.
So
Michelle's big gay Scorpio speech.
Kind of, but also like more broadly. It is, we've gotten into so many points about like the pros and cons of some queer representation and where it's clearly lacking in other capacities. Like there's so much work to do. It is incredibly hard to do it all gracefully when it is a fight, no matter what you want to do. And I personally feel like it is hard to like, do one, like, getting a smooch and being obviously out and, like, saying it and showing it beyond deniability versus, like, having a lot of like non-main characters be very gay but have no internal life. And I feel like it shouldn't have to be an either or situation, but I think like the thing we might really be missing here when we dunk on She-Ra's main character queerness is that like if I were a queer writer in a writer's room and I'm seeing all these other shows that are trying to have people in the background, like, oh, a sister or a cousin or something, like, that's all well and good to normalize it. But if I want queer kids to identify with my characters, I need to, like, make that a priority. I think there's a big difference between just being like, they're gay, there you go. Do you know anything about them? No, but they're gay. And, like, spending like seasons and seasons building up relationships with characters that you can like personally identify with, feel close to, and watch their journey progress, even if they don't obviously smooch anyone. And I feel like that's absolutely where, say, Scorpia is right now. She's tried explicitly to ask Tara out on dates. Like, the whole, like, friendship coded as love thing, it's pretty obvious what's going on. I don't think a lot of kids who were really looking to see themselves are going to miss that. And the fact that Scorpia is somebody who we've seen grow and change is like a huge deal, because she's not just like a rando in a background smooching another lady. Like, she's someone you can really invest in. She's someone you know her journey and her story. And I think we need all of that. But I think especially that's important. So, like, I know we all want to see big gay smooches, but, like, I feel like a lot of hard work's honestly, earnestly, genuinely being done for this show. And they're aware of their limitations, but they're also, like, doing their best with what they have. And I think what they're doing is still very significant, even if it's not, like, beyond deniability because you can't point to a smooch yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and certainly we acknowledge that everyone's doing the best they can. That's why I said in the beginning, like, when we criticize stuff, a lot of it's on the executives, not on the people making it. But I think that's fantastic, Michelle, what you said. Like, I think, like,
well, I spent a year, I had a whole year to think about it. That's why.
It's really well articulated. But I think what I'm hearing is that even if it's just coded, it's main characters, and that's so true. Like,
you can understand what they're thinking. You can see how they interact with each other. You can feel their feelings, and that is so much deeper than just seeing, like, someone in a background shot. You know what I mean? Like, that's so much more personal. And
Star Wars.
It needs to be personal. I'm not coping.
No, it's a Star Wars. I totally agree. It's so much more meaningful with main characters. That's why I'm, like, obsessed with this milestone of, like, main characters kissing specifically, and not background characters.
And we want to see, like, Dylan also wants them to kiss and then date.
Yeah, well, that's another.
I mean, that's a big deal.
In a perfect
it is a big deal, because I don't want, like, Cora ended on the kiss, which was awesome, phenomenal.
It's but then what happened next? And I get, like,
which
in a perfect world, we would get, like, deep character investment build up for seasons and a really good out character who's explicitly queer beyond deniability. But what I'm saying is, like, if it continues to be this weird struggle of an either or between, like, you can be gay and obvious, but you're not going to have any internal life and you're not going to be a main character, or you can be a main character and have a vastly interesting, like, empathizable interior life, but you might not smooch. I feel like that's still incredibly important, and I would prefer that to just, like, no internal life, queer person in corner.
Well, it still needs to be explicit, which I think that's the issue, because, like, yeah, you can have background characters who are explicitly gay but they don't do anything, but, like, I want Scorpia, like, I'm not saying they have to, like, kiss, but, like, am I like Scorpia's gay? Yes. Do I think other people think Scorpia's gay? Not necessarily. So, like, I think that's the issue, is you can be, because it's not like if I wanted to watch something that was just about being gay, I wouldn't watch, like, that's not the kind of stuff I like to watch. Like, I want to watch this big fantasy adventure, but then someone be gay. Like, that's what I want. So I think that's the thing. Like, I think we're getting there. I really do.
Yeah. And that's, like, what I'm
and it can be part of the character's journey. Like, that's fine. Like, that's a whole narrative issue. That doesn't matter. Like, cool. If at the end of the journey they're like, that's cool. I don't care.
And that's, like, the big thing I'm drawing from this year. It's, like, this whole year, it feels like everything I've seen, like, in animation has been about, like, identity, but it doesn't extend to queerness ever. It never extends to, like, to like things beyond like who they are. Like they go into these quote unquote deep things about the people they want to be, the people they think they are, but it never extends to like these real life allegories towards like gender and sexuality. And it just feels like really hollow when we see these characters, and it's just like, so this person who's changing their entire life, it's crazier for them to think about, do I like girls, than it is for them to think, wow, I want to upend my entire way of life. Like it's kind of crazy to me.
Yeah. I think Michelle's point in general of like seeing the internal journey of a character, even if they're not kissing someone, versus seeing like some rando kissing someone is maybe more powerful. I think that's like really good point, and I think She-Ra is the show that taps into it the most.
Yeah.
I also agree that it like should get more specifically into identity, for sure. But like, yeah, it's, I mean, and to like, I hope kids watching Scorpia understand she's gay for Catra. I don't know, but I hope so.
Try and ask her up.
Like what I meant was like, you can have the character be explicitly gay. Maybe they don't have to make out with people, but like, they're gay.
Yeah, but definitely. But also, I think what Michelle's saying is like, this is important on its own. Maybe even more important than a lot of the stuff we're talking about.
It's just like, just for example, it's like, Scorpia's in love with Catra. Catra's not in a place to date her. It takes Scorpia 4 seasons to have enough, like, to trust herself enough and have enough respect for herself to walk away from something, even if she loves that person. And little gay kids need to be able to know, like, what a healthy gay relationship is. And just because they love someone who might also be gay, it doesn't mean they're that person for them. Like, so many kids can see that in straight media, like, a lot more now. Just, like, the difficulties and minutia of navigating relationships as a person. And that's why gay kids need that, too. And so, like, again, like, seeing Scorpia navigate that's so validating, because it's like, yes, like, there's somebody who's like me, and they, this might not be the one, but there's gonna be more girls out there, and that's okay, and like, good job. Like, it's treated as very triumphant, like Scorpia walking away from that. She's found a whole bunch of new friends. Like, it's teaching kids there are other support systems out there, like new ones that they can find and to have hope.
Well, I think there's just a lack of representation of good relationships, period.
Yeah, but I think if there is, period, that means there's even less for, like, anyone queer. Exactly. So, like, that's just so needed, and I'm just, like, so glad that this is at all being done so intently, and I want to see more of it, but I just, like, I don't want to take away from, like, what a big deal that feels like, period, Yeah.
I think Michelle's making a lot of sense to me, and I do think it's, like, a genuine arc of Scorpia's feelings for a woman. Like, that's this year. There's like, and that's pretty unique among any. That's like that's a genuine, even if it's in cagey terms, like that's like a genuine emotional arc that's presented. And yeah, I do think people are going to connect with that. And I will say, relative to last year, I was like maybe harsher on the show, I think this year it's still coded and stuff, but like it's a lot more stepped up. Like, I think like the Scorpia attempts to ask Catra out, that's like very clear what she's doing in that one episode. And I do think Adora's crush on Antara is like very clear. So I think the show has like been a lot better at building and a lot better with it, but also on its own, it's valid. Like, I think that's a great point. Also, we don't need to wait a year next time to talk about it, Michelle. We can get into it whenever. So let's bring it up and I do want to next year. I do want to do more of this type of podcasts in small, like specific increments or stuff like throughout, and we don't need to save it for this. So hopefully we have big stuff to talk about with She-Ra ending. Like, maybe we will get that big kiss, or maybe we will see these arcs culminated in interesting ways. I mean, She-Ra has the most bullet points on my outline for things that happen, so I do think it maybe wins the award for quantity of gayest things this year.
The most gay.
That's pretty important. Okay, here's another big show. We're hitting the big ones early. OKKO ended this year and had at least one huge moment. I mean, Michelle is going to have to talk about this. I did watch the Enid and Red Action kiss episode, and
cute on
it's
the
really
beach.
good. Yeah,
very cute.
This is one of the few main character on screen kisses. The first I think we've talked about. So that's very important on its own. Michelle, more about that, and then you mentioned Venomous and Boxman getting married, and Nick and Joff, who are minor, very background characters-ish, but yeah, having a wedding.
It's a lot. It's all so good. I think like the thing about OKKO especially is that the crew never pretended anyone was anything but like super gay or queer the whole time. So when they started getting married and kissing each other, it was just like, hooray, yes! We already knew for so long, but now it's undeniable. Again, like it's that we get to the undeniability factor, which I think is a lot of what we're still like wanting from these shows. But also we get like Enid and Red, I think especially, like their relationships put in the forefront in quite a few of their episodes together. And even though they don't explicitly talk about their identity, their relationship and wanting to make sacrifices for each other and deciding to put their relationship first in a lot of ways, I think is very validating to see. And the fact that, like, you know, Boxman is just so attracted to Venomous the second he sees him, and he keeps being aggressively attracted to him the whole time, and Venomous comes around by, like, the kind of clunky but, like, endearing genius of Boxman. And it's just so good. And the fact that those are, like, paired, like, you got good guys and bad guys that are, like, in love. And that's just so, it just feels so all-encompassing that, like, so many people are gay at the same time on the same show. I think that's a really good way to normalize it, honestly. And, like, weddings are always good. So we get to see a wedding take place. We get to see the marriage rings. And we get to see, like, Venomous and Boxman, like, grow older and, like, happy into this older chapter of their gay life together. And it's just like the combination of all that is just deeply satisfying on a level I like didn't know I could have in 2019. But I love it, and it's just really good. And I just love Boxman so much. So that's not because he's, you know, queer, but he's great.
Okay, awesome stuff. Yeah, I think the awesome with the Voxman stuff. I think the Enid interaction kiss is like one of the biggest talked about moments of the year for sure.
It's just so happy and sweet and just like a chill date that they're on, and they like each other, so they kissed each other, and I feel like that's good too, because that's like a nice subtle. Like sometimes it's nice for it to be kind of bombastic. Like I feel like Korra and Asami was a little bombastic, and like Bubbling was a bit bombastic in its way, but it's nice to have just those gentle, comforting, like everyday tender stuff too, you know, like that's equally nice to see. So I kind of like it for that reason also.
Yeah, it's a good point. The 3 kisses I talked about last year are all kind of these dramatic moments in these dramatic plot episodes, or I guess the wedding, I mean, I don't know, it's a plot point at least. Like, this is, like, very chill, very, like, end of a chill episode, yeah. It is really nice, and I'm glad it's getting recognition elsewhere. From very positive show to a very question. Sarah, Young Justice Outsiders actually was one of the gayest shows this year. So we talked about Violet being non-binary a little bit already. I think just the summary of that is they have an episode where Violet, like, comes out as non-binary, but they don't really get into it all or don't handle it very well.
Okay.
An attempt was made.
They say so for people who don't know, what happens is Violet is a reanimated corpse, essentially, with the mind machine.
Violet has an AI inside her, and that's her personality.
The AI is actually her brain. Like she does not have the personality of the corpse that she previously was, essentially. And I'm saying she here because the show doesn't move on to say like whether she has different pronouns, even, and people in the show refer to her as she, her, as a woman.
Yeah, which is of course valid, but it would be nice to hear her say that. Like, I prefer she pronouns still. Yeah. Or
like someone asks if you want to go by they them, like anything like that. But no, the show just ignores it. She just says at one point, it doesn't feel like I'm fully a woman, or something to that like level. And then we never get more than that ever. And we have villains and heroes both referring to her as a woman, and no one ever questions that, which also feels kind of icky. And it's just kind of. It's just weird, like a lot of it.
Yes.
It's just weird, Dylan. That's probably the best way to put it.
Yeah, an attempt was made. On the other hand, a very out of nowhere, we get this extremely positive rep at the end of the season.
Yeah, where did this come from, Dylan?
Former main character Calder, Aqua Lad, Aquaman. we meet his boyfriend Wind, and we have an episode where I think they just kiss and like that's it, and it's like, oh, Calder hadn't been this season. I guess that's it. But then next episode they followed up in their main characters in the episode, and they go on like they're part of the plot, and we see them interacting and being cute. And I think this is one of the best rep of the year.
Did they kill one of them?
No,
nope, and neither die. And like Calder's a character a lot of people are attached to from the first two seasons. And
Dylan, we were upset about it too.
I thought I read something that somebody died, but okay.
Well,
Violet dies all the time, but that's
yeah. Someone dies all the time.
And then she comes back to life.
Dies all the time. But the problem with this was that like the first kiss happens in an episode by itself, and we were like, "This is all we're gonna get." And then the next episode, literally right after that, is like just only gay and nothing else.
It was amazing. Like
I do love Calder.
And he's gay. It's great. It's this is such a or bi. The show doesn't get into that. This is such a polarizing season of Young Justice.
Oh, and he's also a character of color. So this is like a big deal. Also for like one, it's hard to get gay characters. It's also hard to have characters of color be gay.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, and it should be noted, Violet's like hijabi wearing, like non-binary.
Hijabi,
but they also never mentioned that
corpse, and also Violet kisses a woman in an episode.
For context, I have only seen in its entirety the first season of Young Justice, so I know who the old
Violet's
characters
a new character,
are.
Yeah, and then Violet kisses Harper, and it's like in a very negative context, not like just like it's like well, no,
Dylan, that happened first. That happened before.
That was the first kiss, and we're like, oh, Young Justice is doing bad rep, and then it did good rep. But I guess I'm of the opinion I would prefer that they took a swing with Violet being non-binary and kissing Harper and missed, than have not done that.
Well, yeah,
and then they do something actually good at the end.
I also think there's a part of it that's bad because like they never talk about like the complex like gender stuff that is Harper like the gayness of this because one of them's non-binary, like that is a complicated gender discussion at that point. But of course they're not going to go into that, and that's okay. But we don't even touch on it.
Not even close. Yeah. I will say there is a new next season of the show, and I think it's very possible they get into more identity stuff with Violet.
Or Violet's just gone because there's too many characters.
Yeah, I mean, really, who knows what they'll talk
Yeah,
about.
who knows, Dylan?
Yeah, in summary, Young Justice had actual stuff, gay stuff happening. Yeah. Go watch the season. It's potentially very frustrating.
Should I get caught up on Young Justice?
Yes. Sure.
Look, if you want this season of Young Justice, Beatrice like hated it and dropped it. I like loved it and ranking it number 3 of the year. Like, it's very differing opinions.
It was strange, though.
Calder,
is Wonder Woman in it?
Yes, I think minorly or something.
Less interested.
She's definitely in it. Everyone's in it, but
everyone's
not a lot. Not a lot.
There are literally 2,000 characters in this show.
Yeah.
Oh,
okay.
No.
Okay. Anyway. Okay. Let's speed up a little. So, Craig of the Creek.
Craig of the Creek.
Recently, we had the most obvious gay characters in the show are the witches, who are these, I guess, like teenage girls that are goths or something. And,
yes.
And they kissed in this episode. We haven't even done a podcast on it yet. The Haunted Dollhouse. And it's on screen. Yeah, we will. Probably this January. And it's I don't know. It's they kissed. It was great.
They kissed. It was great. That's the headline. They kissed. It was great.
I think this is the third. I guess they're not a main character, but I think they're like significant enough.
But this is like very soon in the show for a kiss compared to everyone else, and I think that's pretty great on its own.
Yeah, that's true. This isn't like a last season thing. I feel like this is a big trickle down from Steven Universe. Like I don't think they're kissing unless the wedding happens last year. I think that's pretty wonderful. Although production schedule is IDK how that works. But I mentioned Honeysuckle Rangers as well. That's like less explicit, but like clearly feelings. And then also Craig has a cousin Jasmine who mentions having a girlfriend. Yeah. So, Craig, also a gay show. It'd be nice if it was even gayer, but we're good too.
I'm getting caught up.
Craig is have a girlfriend, who knows?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
He is also a little.
Kelsey and Stax. Had a
Kelsey
episode where it's like they had blushing and stuff at each other. Yeah, I don't think it's like presented as romance, but it's like adjacent romance.
Wait. Are you saying that?
Romance adjacent.
Wait, are you saying
they're like little kids?
Are you saying that Night Girl? Are you saying that Night Girl might like girls?
Night Girl? Who?
Yeah, she thinks she's a warrior.
Kelsey.
She definitely likes ghosts. Wait, also she has a crush on Wildernessa. That's this year too. That also happens.
I've seen
she's definitely has a crush on Wildernessa.
And I can't figure out if it's Kelsey or Chelsea, so it's been very confusing.
It's Kelsey. Yeah,
okay.
She's definitely gay. So okay.
She's
so
my
I forgot about
character.
I would say, she's the best. I think the Kelsey crush on Wildernessa is similar to the Adora crush on Huntara. I think
just
that's
like
the same
it's like
energy.
half admiration, half like you're amazing.
Okay,
yeah.
That's my way there. So
I think that was this year. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff on Craig. Cool. Star vs. Force Evil. I mentioned Star being presented as bisexual in the episode Ransomgram, and then in Gone Baby Gone, she like gets devastated that this buff lady doesn't remember who she is.
She was devastated.
It's wonderful. I would have loved if we got into this more with her, but it was just really amazing on its own. Also, we have this character Jackie. Who comes back this year and is like
the show with a girlfriend. It's kind
of
and then they bring her back. It's like
big energy move.
I'm back from France and I have a girlfriend.
It was amazing, and she's like super cool. Like it's great.
Yeah. So Star had basically no gay in it before its last year, and then had a fair amount. So that's cool. Yeah.
It was something.
Typical,
Sarah,
but
is there anything you want to talk about with
No,
Star?
I don't want to talk. I don't want to talk about trans Marco stuff. Like that's like theory stuff about like censorship, and I don't want to talk about it.
Unfortunately, a lot of is theory stuff with, but yeah.
I'll just say there's a lot of evidence and a lot of things that the staff has said that they move towards making Marco trans, and a lot of I will say that I've looked at a lot of the evidence. It is very overwhelming. That he does a lot of things I did when I was younger. He did a lot of things that a lot of trans people did when they were younger, and it's frustrating that they came that close in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Star vs. Force Evil Future, where we explore that, among other things.
Yes!
How about that? Yeah, I don't know. Okay. Rip Star. Genlock, we've talked about it a lot, Sarah, but any other comments on Val?
I just want to say this whole show is just I related to it so much because the whole show is just about identity and how, like the last episode, like the main thesis is just that, not that this spoils the show, it's just that I'm not going to spoil it. It's just that it's a lot about like how the person you are today, are you the same person tomorrow? And a lot of about change and a lot about its growth. And that's really hard for me. Like, am I the same person I was a year ago? Well, no, but I'm also the same person. Nothing's changed. And that's, I think, an important thing to talk about. And Val is like kind of the embodiment of that idea. And I really love her. And I really love what they went into in this show with her.
Yeah. The whole show is about identity in a way which I've not seen explored as incredibly as Genlock does it. And it also it genuinely gets into queer identity in the episode The Only Me I Know, which is fantastic.
Well, and I do think they sprinkle it through. Like I identify as gender nonconforming. Now, I do use she, her pronouns, but I do identify as gender nonconforming. Well, I'm just saying, like, for me, like, I really, like, Val's character was something that was, like, to watch a Rooster Teeth show. Like, I just started Genlock, and so, like, I just started it, and then I had forgotten Macy Williams was in it, and I got hyped. And then, so I watched it, and I was like, holy, like, this show is amazing. And not only is it visually amazing, but the rep, I was not ready for it, and then the legitimate conversation they had about it. And that was really, like, especially, so first they go into the game sphere, whatever they called it. Like, they were on, like, whatever it was called. Like, their little, like, oh, we're online now. And so he's like, is it Kabu? Is that his name?
Kazu?
Kazu, okay.
Kazu, sorry.
Yeah.
I watched it all at once, and then I was like, oh, Kazu. He, he's like, oh, you play as a guy? And as someone who plays as a guy, I was like, okay, we're getting somewhere here. And then, that whole, like, everything about that was amazing. And, I mean, they even said, oh, think gender fluid. Like, they said gender fluid, which... Like, obviously non-binary, we're getting a lot of rep like that this year, but then to actually say gender fluid and then to explain what gender fluid is, it was incredible. It was a really big deal. And I was not anticipating this from this show about robots fighting each other. So that was amazing. And that was the thing too. Like, you know, at first I was like, it's just this mech show, but it's not a mech show. Like, yeah, they're in giant robots, but like, not really. They are the giant robots.
And
so,
sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, and I think the other important part of the Val stuff is that they show what he sees himself as. Like,
right. No, that was the thing. I think they introduced it first as like they're playing a video game, but then it's like, no, this is how I represent myself. This is who I like. And it's weird, but like, not, I don't think in a bad way. How?
No.
Well, no, I mean like with why can't I remember any of these characters' names?
Because they're all just colors.
But yeah, the green one.
Cammy?
Character. Cammy. She's my favorite character. Cammy, she, you know, we see her, she's like, I'm a rabbit. And it's like, yeah. Okay. But then later, you know, this meant a lot to her, and she makes all of their mechs look like them, like make them represent who they are. And so I think that was like everything thematically they did in this show. I mean, it all, like you said, it all tied into identity, and it all tied into like, and Val's mech tied into their queer identity. And it was just like, it was amazing. Like, I really enjoyed it a lot. And I think it'll be hard, I think, for shows to, and it's unfortunate that it's like behind a paywall, because the show is such great, it's not just great representation, but it's really hard, I think, to top an exploration of identity, of queer identity, and then for it to narratively, like it's literally the foundation of the show, and it's incredible. Like, they do such a great job about it, and it's with mechs. Like, how did they do this? It's magical.
Like, going off what Michelle said about, like, we want, like, Val's thing is important to the story, her character, and his, like, journey through the show. Like, all of that is true, and it's great.
Yeah. Go watch Genlock.
I gotta pick this show back up.
Dylan, we
that was all at Michelle.
Good.
Dylan, we go back in time and tell our, like, selves a year ago from now, like, hey, we're gonna be talking about Genlock being great. It's
ridiculous. It's the biggest surprise of the year. It will be on HBO Max moving forward, so we'll have big visibility. They announced that. Yeah. Arthur, we talked about it, so we don't get the Mr. Ratburn and the Special Someone is the episode that Delaney and Michelle were talking about. Rocko's Modern Life had a movie with
I forgot about
character.
This, but it says a lot about it.
This is the only one. At least there's one that makes me feel slightly better. Yeah, me too.
I watched it, and the problem is that, like, the trans stuff here is amazing, and, like, it's a very, very, very good representation of trans stuff, and I forgot about it existing. And the problem is that the rest of the special is just not really related to it at all. Like, it's just not related to the trans stuff, and it's very much confined to, like, about 5 minutes of a 45-minute special, I think. I think that's about right, which is a little frustrating. Again. Yeah. But she is I think she is the emotional core of the special, Rachel, and I don't think there's much more to say than that. Like, if you want to, like, watch her thing, like, you can probably watch, like, her clips are on YouTube from Netflix. They put them up, or at least the coming out scene, and that's pretty much the biggest scene she's in, and that's it. And it's a great scene, but that's about it. Like, like you said, Michelle, there's, like, explicitly trans, but then there's nothing more than that.
Mm-hmm.
But I did forget she exists, because the special was not that amazing.
So it was a lot, summer.
It was a while ago.
Yeah,
it was.
Yeah. Okay, nice though. RWBY not spending a lot of time on this.
But Dylan, fair game.
No, Blake and Yang is the only thing I found notable enough. We've been waiting for Bumblebee to be canon and explicit, and it is not yet. They're just flirting a lot. They're flirting.
They did kill a man together.
That's
they did. That was this year. Yeah, they did.
It
that,
was this year. See, this is the thing. This is what messed up my rankings earlier, because I was like, oh wait, season 6 happened this year.
So that very end, they did that, and they held hands, and then they've been, like, blushing at each other and stuff.
I will say, when they killed a man together, that was extremely gay.
It was.
Yes, that's the gayest act that you can do.
It was extremely gay.
Hopefully next year we can talk about this being explicit. There's other stuff that is RWBY is getting more gay, but is not really there yet, I would say. But it's getting there. Okay.
We're Crow and Clover. Why do you hate them, Dylan?
Okay, Dylan.
I'm really not talking about this an hour and a half into. Okay, so I don't.
Relate to Michelle with no context.
They're cute together. It's fine.
Okay.
It's not their fault that.
It's not their fault.
Okay.
Dylan also just hates crows, so like that's like a whole other thing.
I like Crow. I hate his semblance. Okay,
BoJack. Michelle, they have
no.
Have magic. One of them is good luck magic. One of them is bad luck magic, and Dylan hates the idea of that.
Oh, that is so. That's a lot to wrap your head around.
Okay. BoJack Horseman. Todd continues to be like the only asexual character on television, and that's depressing. But also, Todd's great, and he not as much of him being ace stuff in the 8 episodes we got this year, but he references his asexual dating app, and he does match with an asexual woman at the end of the season. So I think that's something that might be explored in the second half, and it's pretty wonderful. Other than that, gay character Kelsey Jennings is back, and she has a line about advocating for gay superheroes. And then there's a new character Dr. Shampoo mentions having a husband. So minor-ish stuff, but pervasive, I think.
One little thing that you didn't mention with Todd is that I like the divide between they showed asexual, but he's still romantic. Like those are two separate things you can be that are valid.
Yeah, they talked about it a lot more in the last season.
Yeah, but it's still important.
It is important. It is nice because I feel like Todd. We didn't know he was ace till like the 3rd or 4th season. It took a while, but I like it. Like they've been consistently since that point touching on parts of his experience being ace, in addition to like all his other life stuff, which I feel like is like a good thing to do too, because being ace is a big part of him and it needs to be talked about. But also he's a person who has other things going on. I like that.
Yeah. Tuca and Bertie has some minor rep stuff, specifically in the episode The Jelly Lakes. We meet swimming coach, I think Maple, and her wife Pat, and they're pervasive in that episode.
They're so gay and love.
Yeah. And then there's like a very minor thing of main character Tuca. Like there's a flashback seeing her with a woman, apparently the deli guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's important because it's the main character. We rip Tuca and Bertie, sigh.
Rip.
Dragon Prince. So coloring Dragon Prince is that we learned this year that one of the creators is like a terrible person, but and also that they're like shooting down rep from queer people in the room. But there is rep that makes it in. It's just not like great rep. There's a flashback episode where there's like 2 gay queens, and they do kiss on screen. It is one of the prominent kisses of the year. They then die.
Of course.
There's it's a flashback, but we know they're dead, but then they die. And we see the most recent season, we see Runan, who's like a minor character. We met his husband, and we see a flashback of them kissing. And, but Runan's dead, but not really, but he's dead because the show's not going to come back. So more dead people. And then there's Amaya, the shining beacon of the show.
This is one of my favorite ships of the year because it's so good. It's like they start off on opposite sides, but then they respect each other, and then they grow closer and they hold hands. And we all know what that means.
they hold hands. That's the big moment. Yeah, they're really appealing. It would have been nice if this show, probably without as many restrictions as a lot of other shows, had them kiss. I think that's on the creators actually for this specific show. But still, people love Amaya and Janai, and they are great.
They're so great.
Yeah, so there you go. There's just Dragon Prince. Someone want to talk about 12 Forever?
I think Michelle and I both watched that. I'll talk about it. I'll at least talk about Riley. Riley's representation of their fear of puberty, I really liked. I think that's like what I was talking about earlier. Unfortunately, not a lot of people saw this show, but I think the idea, because something that happens when trans people talk about puberty and talk about growing up is that a lot of cis parents, a lot of people unaware of how this works, is they see that fear and they say, oh, I had these same fears when I was growing up, even though it's a very different thing that's happening than what you had when you were growing up. But at the same time, you get why it's just such a other thing than you're used to if you don't go through it. And this show really showed that Riley didn't want to go through puberty, but there was more to it than just, I don't want to wear bras, I don't want to have a period. Like, there was a lot to it, and I liked that they went into at least a little bit. Like, we didn't get very deep because this show is also canceled, but there was at least a little bit of talking about it, at least in the beginning of the season, and I liked that.
Yeah. Also, there's two buff men in
Yeah.
the Forever universe who are very in love, and they write each other cute little cards about
They are
how much
very
they
gay.
love each other. And they're like these big, beefy men, which is also like really sweet.
Yeah, they're big. They're masculine, and like they don't
Yeah.
like. I think a lot of like with gay relationships, they usually like kind of cast them as like one way or the other. Like they're usually like two halves. I think these are just both two big men.
Yeah.
Who
They're
are
big,
very gay.
chunky boys, and they love each other a lot. And
Yeah,
they're
and I like
tough
that.
and in love. Yeah, I love it too.
Okay, nice. Yeah, continuing to go quickly through some of these more minor ones. My Little Pony Friendship is Magic.
Alright,
So what's going on with this? I've not kept up. What's happening with
Hey,
my Little
I'll
Pony?
read what's on my outline. I don't watch it. Lyra Heartstrings and Sweetie Drops propose to one another in the season 9 episode The Big Mac Question.
Aww.
And in the series finale, they're shown as married in a newspaper clipping. There you
Oh,
go.
that's cute. So two background
Aw.
lady ponies got married.
Incredible.
Needle implied two of the main ones are like coded as gay, but not actually.
mean,
Which ones? It has to be Rainbow Dash.
Yeah,
and
I think Needle
I
said
think
Rainbow
it-
Dash and Applejack.
Oh my god!
The gay
That
one.
was my ship from college. I'm so happy.
I don't know. Anything
I also
on
watched
My
the
Little
beginning
Pony.
of the show in
Oh
college.
my
Like,
God.
Really hope that they're married.
Ooh.
That's great.
Rip, My Little Pony Friendship's Magic also ended this year. Miraculous Ladybug continues to have Rose and Julica being cute in the background.
Super
and
cute.
also-
They're super cute.
They are very cute.
Also, Mark and Nathaniel are also
Kind of
cute in the
gay.
background.
A little bit.
Would be nice to see this explored more explicitly. Like we talked about last year, this is one of the better background depictions you'll see. It's pretty consistent in a lot of episodes, these two couples. Love, Death, and Robots. Go listen to our Love, Death, and Robots podcast for more on this. But the first episode, I think Sonny's Edge featured a female sex scene leading into it being like a honeypot to
God, that was
them
not great.
murdering each other or something. So if it sounds problematic, it is. There you go.
That's a good quick way.
Delaney's not going to watch this.
You don't need to.
I still think that episode has some good stuff.
Okay,
I don't know.
It's also a gorgeous episode. Like the animation is
just
absolutely
gorgeous, right?
stunning.
Like, you Love, Death, and Robots equal. It's gorgeous, but problematic, and some episodes are boring. That's what you need to know. Some
Turn off
episodes
your
are
brain.
good. Okay, Hazbin Hotel is a one-episode pilot. The main character, Charlie, has a girlfriend, Vaggie. They referenced each other being together, although it's not too much beyond that. But that is, right off the bat, queer main character. Would be awesome to see more from the show. They also have this character, Angel Dust, mentions being with guys, and there's character Alistair, I think we know as Ace, but I don't know if that's presented on the show. I don't remember. I don't think so. But yeah, Charlie and Vaggie, they're great. Big Mouth, yeah.
Who's gonna tackle this?
I'll talk
Look,
about it because I have a
What's
lot.
what's the 10? We want the 20-second.
I know.
explanation of
I
them.
know. I'm gonna give you
Yeah.
the 10 whatever.
It's
second.
bad.
It's bad. But the big thing about it is that it equates. It's the main thing is that they're saying bisexuality and pansexuality. The difference is that they find attraction to people. So bisexual people, they find attraction to men and women, and pansexual people find attraction to men, women, trans men. Like they equate men and women to be something separate to trans men and trans women, and that's just like the base level badness of it. And there's more beyond that it goes, and I don't think we need to go deeper than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, strongly agree.
Most bisexual people use the label means everyone at this point, and it is problematic to present these types of things because not Big Mouth has a huge audience, and that's the bad part. I think you could show a character being problematic, but it's I don't
to imply like all bisexuals are trans exclusive is like a pretty big not good thing to just blanketly state.
I also know
didn't
that's
seem
not
like they
true.
didn't seem like they understood what they were doing. I would say
No,
personally.
absolutely not.
Yeah.
I
It's
think
so
what
weird
they're
that
trying to say is like, because at least, and this is like, being pansexual is something that can mean slightly different things to different people. Same with bisexual. For me personally, I like to think of bisexual as just like the gender or non-gender of somebody is part of your attraction to them. Like it's actively important and why you like find them appealing. Whereas pansexual is more of a like, I like this person for like their personality first, and not so much about like their gender. Like that is less important, if not like unimportant. And I feel like that's like a much broader way to say maybe what they were trying to say, but what they ended up saying was just really bad.
But that's still not even really accurate. That's more a definition of demisexual, where you can only be sexual with someone who you find a personal attraction to, like a personality.
Look, these labels mean different things to different people.
Yeah,
I know a lot of people also equate bisexual and pansexual meaning very similar things.
So and then they do tackle, I think, an interesting, like, to give Big Mouth the tiniest little star. They explore this. Everyone's like, "Ollie's so cool," but then Jay's like, "I like dudes," and they're like, "What? That's weird. Don't look at me in the locker room, you weirdo." Like, they go through this. They don't really resolve it at all, but they do go through. And Jay is like, "Y'all are hypocrites. Like, you think Allie is cool because she likes girls, but because I like dudes, it's weird." So
you are.
It's that male gaze. Yeah, it's
exactly what happened.
I didn't know until now Delaney had seen Eddie Big Mouth. So
Big Mouth did that?
I've seen almost all of season 3 of Big Mouth.
Wow, Delaney's an expert.
Tanya needs to take you to like a spa for that.
I assume it was for
If it helps, she also watches it just for the flaming garbage dumpster fire that it is.
But she watched it on purpose, it sounds like, doesn't she?
Okay.
Never mind, this doesn't matter. This does not matter.
Let's get into anime. We want more time for Given, right? I feel like Given's the anime you guys have talked to the most about it this year. And Stars Align, but here's Sarah and Michelle talk about Given.
Michelle, do you want to go first?
Oh my god.
Not in general, specifically the gay.
No, I know. I mean, but when we're tackling Given, everything's gay in Given. That's why it's like the breakout gay show of anime this year, because it's all really good. So like all 4 of the main characters in the band are gay and they're in love with each other. 2 of them are like high school, 2 of them are like college plus. I think they're college. Might be slightly out of college. Yeah.
The college one is bi, I think, not gay.
Yeah. And it's all just the great thing about Given is it does that thing I was talking, like they have so much time to develop these interpersonal relationships, and you get their sense of like where they were before and where they are now, and how being in love with each other feeds into that, and how it impacts like their band dynamic and how their music's progressing, and like finding a name for the band, and like how they're gonna perform if like 2 of them fight because they're immature and in high school but are crushing on each other but can't communicate great because they're little babies still. And it's like the queerness is so upfront, but it also just like, it's just, I don't know, it feels like how it feels to watch a really good heterosexual drama show, because it's so naturally put in there, and it just feeds everything in a very believable way, and it's so deeply saturated with gayness and is very upfront about it. Like, insane. I say insanely just because, like, I feel like 5 years ago I couldn't have found an anime that just does with, like, Yuri on Ice tried so hard and they couldn't even get like a smooch, and like Given's just blown the door open compared to that, and it hasn't been
3 on-screen kisses between the main characters.
Yes, and it's just how many episodes? 10? Like, that's pretty amazing. So, I mean, it's just, the writing's really good, it's beautiful, the music's good, and the character stuff's all great, and it happens to be really, really gay. And so, like, that is a quality niche show that I would highly recommend to anyone interested. Okay, yeah, Sarah, your turn.
Go.
Oh, sorry. So, like, I think that everything, like, yes, that is all that Given is, but the thing that I really loved about Given was that there was an actual scene where one older gay guy explained to a younger gay guy that it's okay to be gay. Like, that was really, like, good. Like, there was actually, like, a mentor figure explaining to him, like, yeah, that's fine, whatever. You like him, that's cool, whatever.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It reminded me, it's like the male parallel to Bloom Into You when we
Yeah, I was
have
gonna say
that
that
character
reminded me of that
talk
scene
to
with the bar.
Yeah, it is like that. Like at the cafe, it's like that, but for the guys. Because like I think that is the first time the main character comes out to anyone, and it's his bandmate, and he's older, and he. Oh, go ahead.
No, it wasn't that he was coming out. It's that he literally did not understand that he was gay. Like he literally didn't know.
He was like figuring out in the process and be like, "Oh, this makes sense now. This is what's happening." And it was fine.
Really cool.
Yeah, it's really, and it's handled very well. It's very gentle and just like understanding, and he has like a safe space to talk about it, and his bandmates supporting him and be like, "Yeah, well, let's talk about it. Let's chill," you know. And it's just so good. It's so good because like another part of Given is like one of the characters, like part of their backstory is a really tragic backstory where their first boyfriend / best friend, like, well, is this like spoilers? Are we allowed to give spoilers?
We can just say it doesn't end well. Let's just say it does
not end well, and it's very, and it could have gone into this tropey territory of like we need our tragic gays, and it really doesn't because the rest of the group is just. Like everyone else is like kind of doing okay. Everyone has their drama, but it's not harping on that to be bad. It's like part of him being in the band is about him trying to figure out how to get through this and find his own voice. And that's incredibly hard for him.
And it doesn't like we were talking about earlier with She-Ra, where it's like it shows that there are other people you can be in relationships
with. Yeah, and it doesn't all end just with that first person, and it can get better, and you should be hopeful. And like it is a very hopeful show, which I also think is just like such a relief.
It is. And there's a movie coming out, which is great.
Yes.
Nice. Yeah, like Bloom Into You and Given, I think like kind of seems like a trend. More these types of shows are with actual rapper happening in anime. It's kind of crazy because we always joke about how anime is so terrible and problematic, and like there are some good shows. You know, there are some non-problematic shows. So maybe hopefully more to come. Another good show, Stars Align, airing currently. I think
it just stops. Yeah.
Okay, that's a complicated question because
maybe not good. Okay, you guys seem to like it though.
No,
it's really good.
The show is great. The thing is, when they first got ordered the show, I'll keep this part short. They were ordered 24 episodes, but halfway through production, the studio cut them off, even though they had storyboarded most of the season at that point. Like, the whole story was done. And so they have 12 episodes here, but the last 12th episode ends on a cliffhanger, and the story's just not over. But despite that, episode 8 of the series is honestly kind of everything I think I've been talking about, in that, like, it's an episode with 2 middle schoolers talking about the gender binary and taking it all apart and being like like talking about how like they have a person who they consider like an uncle because they're so friendly, but they're a trans guy, and it's like, and it talks about that, and it talks about how one of the child talks about like not knowing what they identify as and being frustrated because people are asking them what they identify as and they don't know. And there's just this, and they actually show a screen of like him reading from an LGBT book, and it's just like it's so not subtle, but also it's the kind of thing that we need right now in Japan, I think.
And just everywhere, but yeah.
Nice.
And there's another character accepting it. Like there's a plot in this episode of two male presenting characters dressing in women's clothes to like sneak in somewhere and do something, and instead of being this comedic thing, all the friends view this as something kind of normal and kind of fine and kind of like not a big deal from that perspective. And I think that is good. Like it's not like done for laughs, it's done for a purpose. And later in the episode, like one of the characters dressed in those clothes goes home, and there's a plot thing comes from it for their identity, and it's just really good. And the whole episode is just this singular deconstruction of the idea of the gender binary, which is something which is crazy for me to say about an anime, Dylan.
It doesn't sound right, but
it's never coming out of my mouth.
Awesome. Yeah. Look, maybe there's hope for anime. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, maybe. But also they canceled the show before it was even done.
Hey, is there renew Stars Align?
Well, like,
yes.
Yeah.
Very upset. I'll just say that.
Yeah. Okay. Probably not to the level of these two shows, but Sarazanmai is probably hard to talk about in these terms, Sarah. I would say the biggest thing is it's just generally queer themed throughout.
It definitely seems like, and this is kind of like what I was talking about earlier, where like, why do we have all these children struggling with their identity, and one of them clearly is gay coded, but I don't think they ever say it in the show explicitly. But there never is like this real discussion of it. Like they just have these they're just coded, and there's a slight talking about it, but like they never really dig into it, and it's never really considered something truly real. And then, of course, the big thing, Dylan, is the cross-dressing aspect, which is just strange in retrospect, because there's a point where the character moves forward, and part of their character growth is that they don't need to cross-dress anymore, which feels bad.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they did a lot of work to present female, which also is strange, because a lot of that work is not easy, coming from experience.
Yeah, I think when we were talking about Sarazanmai, I feel like it was like a lot of potential to do really interesting queer things that probably didn't get there.
And I really think they did almost get there with the main character, because I remember watching it and being like, there was a lot of coding for the main character to be trans at the very least, and there was a lot of coding for his friend to be really, really gay, but we just don't do it for some reason. It's kind of strange.
Yep. Okay. So, just check that show out for how weird it is.
Okay, that show is one of the weirdest shows I've ever watched.
Oh yeah. And then last you have Carole and Tuesday, which has some very problematic elements, but also some other rep in it. And then there's Fruits Basket, a show that some people here love, but has maybe a problematic episode or character to it. If anyone wants to comment on anything from either of these,
I can talk about Fruits Basket, but I think Michelle might be better to talk about Carole and Tuesday.
So there are certain things that I think are objectively handled very well. You have Gus, who's like the manager of Carole and Tuesday for their band, whose ex-wife is in a relationship with a woman, and they are very amiable, and he like supports her and has no beef, and they're just fine, and she's just queer now, and they smooch in like a very early episode, and it's like, oh, okay. Which is like nice. She's not a main character. But then there's other stuff that I'm like not there. There is like Desmond is like an artist who I'm assuming is non-binary. They go by not they them pronouns. The way they like talk about it, it's like they said like, well, I was born like a man, but at this point, like I am like sort of comfortable being a woman too, but it's like left ambiguous. So like I don't think they explicitly say they're non-binary like a lot of these characters, but the fact that they are androgynous and use they them, it's trying to do something, if not explicitly, that's something to that effect. But then you also have things like Angela's mom, who is like, I would say like obviously trans, but they don't ever say it in the show, which is a bit strange. But like there's a picture of her with Angela when Angela's a lot younger, and she's dressed like completely masculine, and she goes by her pronouns now, so like that seems to be like a lot of indication that she's trans, but like it would help a lot if they just explicitly ever said that. So those are like all the things that immediately come to mind. Like I always got such queer vibes from Carole and Tuesday particularly, but this show never made that firm. So like it could have been better.
Yeah
Okay. That's my general feeling towards Carole and Tuesday, but I don't think I have anything else I need to say about it. But for Fruits Basket, I think this is a very big example of the systematic transphobia that is in anime in Japan. Like, it's just like, I talked about it, or Beatrice read something or talked about it on that podcast. It might be easier to listen to that just to hear like everything I said. But in terms of like specifically what happened in that episode, long story short, it pretty much equates being trans to being a crossdresser, and like Dylan, like we were talking about, like magically affirming gender and stuff like that. It kind of magically disaffirms the character's gender, which is frustrating. And Michelle, you might want to plug your ears, because I know the end of this character's arc
Oh, I know too. I couldn't help.
I'm gonna say it because it just makes me so upset.
It's pretty terrible.
This character's arc, this person who cross dresses as a woman. Because I'm saying it just because the show says it. Just to be clear, they at their end of their arc is that they find that they're confident enough in their own identity and their own self that they don't need to dress as a woman anymore, and they can be called a man. And it's just very, very insulting. And this is the anime, and they're fully going with that storyline with the anime.
Yeah.
And it's very frustrating that this is the character, this is the show that's like, this is one of the shows that's biggest this year. I remember so many people excited for Fruits Basket to come back, and it's so frustrating this horrible representation is part of it.
I strongly agree with all of that. It's just incredibly, and this is not Fruits Basket's only crime, but it's probably one of the most egregious crimes. And I feel like it honestly, like, it was such a shock, like, watching that episode, trying to understand, because, like, this character, Ritsu, is presented, like, as a woman. Nobody tells us they identify as a man until, like, it's revealed in this really, like, dumb, just, like, not great way. And, like, to then try to, like, piece together, like, well, why are they presenting like this? Why did they have a flashback where they said trying on girl clothes felt like right to them? Like, that is some trans experience stuff. And, like, my takeaway was basically, like, this is maybe what happens sometimes when, like, cis women write things and make decisions not knowing the vast impact, like, it's gonna have, because and the thing is, like, we had so many people, like, defending this, like, no, it's fine, it's just a cross-dresser, it's not a big deal. But it's like they're trying to be trans, but it's like, yeah, and it's
the
like...
flashback.
Sorry?
The flashback is the big part of this, where, like...
Yeah, it's a huge part of it.
They specifically say they feel safe and comfortable when they're doing this for the first time. And it's just, like, that's not a thing you say unless you're digging something deeper here that we never get into.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like, if this was presented, like, wholeheartedly as just, like, cross-dressing, like, that would be its own kind of problematic thing. But, like, it is so cloaked in so many, like, trans experience things, you can't take that away from it. And that just makes the fact that they decide that, oh, they're gonna be a man and they're okay, like, that was a phase, basically. That's that's the biggest turfy thing you could say to a trans person, is that it's a phase, and that's
they detransition.
And that is exactly what this character ends up doing, and that alone is just so not good. And just in 2019, you think this wouldn't be a thing that was perpetuated,
but it's based on
here
an 80s
we
comic,
are.
That's why.
But they could change it. I mean, that's what we keep saying. Like, they made a choice, and that choice really sucks.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we have on the outlet about Haru, Michelle, if you like.
Haru is very bi, and he loves one of the main characters, Yuki, a lot. And it is pretty clear, but the show also, like, doesn't... They don't seem to 100% think that's a great thing, and that's also very sad and distressing.
So that's sad.
Yeah, sad.
Okay. So, in conclusion, anime still a mixed bag, despite some bright spot shows. And there's obviously a ton of problematic stuff happening that we didn't even mention on other shows that we just don't watch.
Yeah.
There you go.
It sucks to end on a bad note.
Well, let's end on a good note then, with some final thoughts on anything we've talked about. Michelle, do you have any positive comments to end on?
I'm really excited to just see things be even more gay as we move forward. And, like, my ultimate goal is just, like, to have, you know, what I'm hoping She-Ra's gonna do, when I think shows like Given have been doing really well, is just, like, give us full people experiences that relate explicitly to their queerness, to help people, real people watching the shows, navigate their lives with a little more confidence and a little more, like, easily, and with more acceptance. Like, I think that's the ultimate goal. If you're gonna have this in your show, and you should, to take it seriously and think about how you're gonna help real people with it. So that's, like, I feel like, especially with kids, that's especially important. And the fact that there's so many of these children's shows that are starting somewhere is a very good indication of, like, our cultural shift. So I'm just like excited. 2020, come on, let's do it.
Awesome. Yeah. Let's see what's coming up. Hopefully, even better than this year. Delaney, any final thoughts?
I believe 2020 will be queerer than ever.
Yay!
Bold statement.
This is my bold statement. We will find out next
we'll
year.
Let's start off strong soon. Okay, we can do it. Sarah, final thoughts.
There was a lot of fun stuff this year, and that's good. We don't have to do sad gays all the time.
Yeah.
Like, that's probably the biggest thing. And also, I think the biggest thing is that, like, it feels like a lot of creators are being a lot more vocal about the censorship that's happening, even if it's just, like, little things. Like, it feels like we know about the censorship happening in a more tangible way now. That might just be, like, recency bias, but I think that's actually happening. Which feels like... Yeah. Which feels like it's definitely not enough, but I mean that, like, it's a big deal that they feel like they can't even say that this happened.
Right, like addressing that there is like an actual problem is part of the step to like making it less of a problem. Yeah. Yeah, it's not a big step, or it's not like a big step forward, but it's a step that we need to take at some point.
Yeah. It's talked about more. I think that's part of the breaking the ceiling type thing. I think able to be talked about and able to be shown more, and hopefully all that continues. I thought there's a lot of great stuff we talked about. So thank you guys. And if you listening have like connected with any sort of discussion or have comments, definitely comment about anything, and can always do follow-up podcasts on any of these like many topics we talked about. So if you liked anything in particular, let us know, and then we'll see if hopefully some big stuff pops up next year. We can follow up with maybe things we're talking about in a context of new thing that's happening. Those are some things I'm interested in moving forward. But that was great, and 2019 was had a lot of good stuff, so that's great. And thanks if you made it to the end. Thank you. Very long podcast.
Good job. 2 hours. Woo!
Yeah, overlyanimated.com. Our Discord, talk to us about anything we talked about on our Discord, overlyanimated.com/Discord. Thanks to all our patrons, especially our patron of the podcast, Bob. And thanks as always to our patron executive producers, Ryan, Steve, Alex, Beatrice, Hugh, Michael, and Needle. If this year we talk about a lot of these shows that we've talked about in more detail on this podcast, and a lot of these types of rep issues and just rep in general throughout a lot of our discussions. If you're new to us, all that's at overlyanimated.com, and subscribe all those places. So thank you guys for listening. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.